life to change, but we're still using the old understandings. That doesn't make sense. That's why Krishna is telling Arjuna here, Arjun, assess yourself. You have to make changes within yourself if you want a different outcome. Even Einstein told us this, right? That change cannot happen from the same level of consciousness that created it. You have to have a different level of consciousness. And this is what he's telling Arjuna. Arjun, you've come from knowledge. Now I've told you about wisdom. Be wise. Now I'm going to tell you about Dhira. What is it that is Dhira? What is this consciousness that is the consciousness of being Dhira? So we see that kind of consciousness does not produce a healthy life. It is a very unhealthy life because you're affecting your own self. You are the one that's causing harm to yourself without you knowing it. So that's why these lessons of life are gifts of providence. They are gifts of Krishna. And that's why they are so stark, just like death. We see at the current moment with our loved ones during this COVID pandemic that we've lost a lot of close people that we've really never thought this would happen right now. And therefore it's making us assess life on a totally different level, because at the level we're assessing, we can't make sense of it. How is it that people are just dying around us like this? So we have to move our consciousness to a higher platform, a platform that can assess all three levels of reality. So to appreciate the gifts of life, we also have to appreciate death, because we can see what we will lose when death comes. We lose everything because our foundation is built only on the body and the subtle nature. We've not built it on the spiritual nature. Therefore, to see these gifts of life as gifts from God, remember, He's perfect. He's created this whole creation so perfectly. It works so perfectly. It's because we interfered. Therefore, there's imbalance. So the same way, if we know God is all powerful and He's made creation, surely He can also make creation in my life on an individual level. He's made creation on a macro level. What about on a micro level, at my level of individuality? So if I give Him a chance to create my life, if I give Him a chance to understand me and work with me, if He can create this whole creation, surely one person is not a challenge for Him. The only way it will be a challenge is if we fall into self-pity. If we fall into self-pity, then we can see that nobody can help us. We've made a decision not to act. We've decided, and not to act is a decision. We've decided, I'm not going to take the counsel of Krishna. I'm not going to take the counsel of Bhagavad Gita. I'm not going to take the counsel of the divine realm. So once we decided, then it has consequences. And the consequences of that is that we're facing life just from this unstable platform of the body and this unstable platform of the mind and the bewildered intelligence. And we want stability from that, and we want progress from that. We have the demands, but we're not willing to do the work. What is the work? The work is the process of life. We are work in progress, right? Life is work in progress. You've seen those wherever they construction and they're building, they put their work in progress. This is life. Life is work in progress. So how do we redeem ourselves to make our emotions sweet again? We first assess life for what it is. Don't see it for bigger than what it is. The mind is only making a mountain out of a molehill. So see it for what it is. And how do we do that? We need the positive platform first. So when you assess life, that if God made this whole creation and He made it perfectly, surely this is so big. Surely I'm an individual infinitesimal living being. I won't even be a challenge for Him. So if we have that faith, if we have that level of faith, then every part of life becomes a gift to understand the process. A gift from God, because He's giving you the strength as well. So once we assess life as a gift, death makes us see that. Anybody who, as soon as you see death, you start to appreciate your own life, right? As soon as you see others dying, as soon as you see a coffin, as soon as you see a loved one gone, you start to appreciate something about your own life. So why does death have to be that? Why can't you appreciate life at every step of the way? At every moment of life? Why can't we look at life from that way? So how do we do it? From gratitude. From gratitude. First see the gifts that God has given you. Then see the challenges that He's given you. We are first seeing the challenges. We're not looking at the gifts at all. The gifts are there. What is the gift? I'm alive today. I have my family today. I had them for the past 20, 30, 40, 50 years. That's a gift. I'm breathing today. I'm living today. I'm alive today. If you start counting your gifts of gratitude, you can't stop. My dear Lord Krishna, you who is the Lord of all creation, if you made such a masterpiece, surely you can make this one small soul, this individual being, a masterpiece as well. Make him perfect. Make him in your image. So when you see from the spiritual platform, you can see even death, which is such a difficult thing to handle, is a lesson in life to appreciate my gifts. Appreciate what God has given you, because we are so stuck on the bodily level that we won't even see our gifts. We always only seeing the negative, all the bad things that happen to us, all the bad things that's happening to us right now, all the bad things that happen to us. We just focus on that, and like that LP, we just keep on going in that loop, scratch, scratch, scratch. But if we see life as a gift, then we trust His power, because we're seeing it in creation. And we trust His power, because if we focus on the gifts that He's given us, we'll see He's acting right now in my life, but I'm focusing on the negative. I'm focusing on my negative emotions and the loop that it's taking me on. So by decision, I avoid God's gifts, and I'm accepting these negative gifts from my mind through the unbalanced emotions. Do you see where we are, devotees? Hari Bol! Hare Krishna. So as we are assessing, how did I get to where I am now? So we're seeing that lamenting is an emotional response to an unpleasant situation. So how do I get to where I am? Because from childhood, I've learned that crying gets me what I want. I've learned if I cry, I get what I want. The child starts by crying, manifesting sometimes as a child, sometimes as a youth, and sometimes as an old man. So Prabhupada again is saying here, it's the different stages of the body. You are seeing it as boy, as youth, as old man. But these are different stages of the body. So the problem of life is you haven't addressed your emotions. Not that you're lamenting death. Death is a process of life. And you see here in today's one also, it's old age. And you remember our definition of the problems of life. What is the problem? It's birth, disease, old age, and death. Everything else is a symptom of that problem. Whatever is happening to us in life is a symptom of birth, disease, old age, and death. And here today in this verse, we're seeing death and we're seeing old age. So two biggest problems of life is in this verse. You see how deep this verse is? So Krishna is not addressing the symptoms of what Arjuna is feeling and experiencing. He's saying, Arjuna, get your emotions right about these 4 things first. Get your emotions right about birth. Get your emotions right about disease. Get your emotions right about old age. Get your emotions right about death. If you don't do that, you're not going to go through the process of life. You're going to be stuck in an emotional loop that's going to cause your own destruction. So let's see what Prabhupada says here. Yet the same spirit soul is there and does not undergo any changes. So again, changes. So changes to you only happen at the level of the body and at consciousness. At the level of the body, it's always changing. But at the level of consciousness, you have to actively make the change. You have control over it. Using the intelligence has control over the mind. So changes of the body you have no control of, but you do have control of changes of your mind, changes of your consciousness. So that's your prerogative. So Krishna is saying, understand the process of life. Body you can't change, but mind you can change by changing your consciousness. Therefore, Prabhupada called this Krishna consciousness. Change your consciousness to understand God. Change your consciousness to understand the spiritual world. Prabhupada goes on here. This individual soul finally changes the body at death. So what has happened here? The body is no longer livable. So the body, you cannot stay in it. The fact that you take your body again the next day means it's livable. But once it comes to a point when it's no longer livable, you cannot inhabit it anymore, it's uninhabitable, then at that stage it's called death. And then you change it and get another body. So that's why Krishna is saying it's a process. You haven't understood the process and you're lamenting like this. So let's see what Prabhupada says here. And transmigration to another body. And since it is sure to have another body in the next birth, either material or spiritual. So see, Prabhupada is saying here, it's also a spiritual body that you can get. Krishna is saying, Moksha Shyami Ma Suchaha. Don't worry, I'll give you moksha as well. So you'll get a spiritual body. So either way, we're going to get a body. What body it is depends on your consciousness. He says this in 8.6. Yam yam vapi smaram bhavam tyajanti ante kalevaram tam tam evaite konteya sada tad bhava bhavita. So what bhava, what's the nature of your consciousness? Yam yam vapi smaran bhavam. What you are smaran, you are remembering at the time of death, that you shall attain without fail, Arjuna. So what is your consciousness? Smaran means consciousness. So you see how important this is? Because if you haven't cultivated the spiritual consciousness in life, how do you expect it to suddenly appear when you're dying? We expect it to suddenly appear. You did nothing tangibly spiritual for yourself through life. You've done dharma. And this is what Krishna is telling Arjuna. You've done dharma, you've done charity, you've done prayers, you've done rituals, you've done traditions, you've done cultures. You've done all these things. But what have you done for yourself? For your own development, spiritual development. You've done nothing there. And now at the end of life, you're just hoping God will suddenly appear when you've done nothing to improve yourself? He's saying, why is this happening? Because you've conflated the idea of dharma and paro dharma. You're thinking that religious tradition is sufficient to take you to the spiritual world. It's not. That's why Krishna defines it. Sarva dharman parityaja. Give up all these dharmas. Mam ek aham saranam braja. Just surrender to me. I will take care of all that dharmas. I'll take care of you now. We were learning yesterday. I'll take care of you in the spiritual world also. Just surrender unto me. Why is it so difficult for you to do, Arjuna? Let's see what Prabhupada says here. There was no cause for lamentation by Arjuna on account of death. So he's telling Arjuna, nothing for you to lament. This is part of the process of life. So understand it. See how the body is changing. Observe properly. You haven't done that. You have a poor fund of knowledge, Prabhupada says. You have a poor fund of knowledge and you want to go through life just with that information. That's not going to help you. So let's see what Prabhupada says here. Neither for Bhishma nor Drona, for whom he was so much concerned. So this brings a very deep question, that what is the difference between attachment and love? Because we were touching on these points, that if it's love, then it's unalloyed, it's unconditional. And that love comes from the spiritual dimension. But we see in life, even with our closest loved ones, they also have some tinge of their own lackings that they want to superimpose on us so that we can complete their desires. They want us to be someone. They want us to be something. They want us to be acknowledged in society as their children. They want us to achieve in the community so that ultimately it connects back to them. So these are harsh realities, but we are studying the process of life. See that, devotees? So when we study this, what is attachment and what is love? Are we doing it, or are they doing it out of attachment or out of love? Because pure love cannot be found in this world. It's just a semblance. Because somehow or the other, it will be contaminated, because this is a dual environment. This is a dualistic nature. It can't be completely pure. So even love is not completely pure in a dual environment, in a dualistic environment. So therefore, if we want pure love, unalloyed love, unconditioned love, it only can come from the spiritual platform. So therefore, he's telling Arjuna, assess yourself, that your connection to Drona and Bhishma sounds like it's love, but it's actually just attachment. And if it's attachment, then there's a certain level of selfishness that will come from our side with that. Oof, that is difficult to assess about life, but think about it. Let's see what Prabhupada says here. Rather, he should rejoice for their changing bodies from old to new ones, thereby rejuvenating their energy. So devotees, just see this statement of Prabhupada. Prabhupada is speaking on the level of Dhira now, as a person who is Dhira. Because how can you say then, if you're not Dhira, then you're going to say, hey, this is my loved ones, and you're saying, no, better you all die now. Euthanasia. You can get new bodies and enjoy in a better situation after that. You can only speak like that if you are established on the platform of Dhira. Otherwise, for somebody who is attached on the bodily level, that is pain. How can you even speak like that? But understand the dimension from which this knowledge is coming. Spiritual dimension. Let's see what Prabhupada says here. Such changes of the body account for varieties of enjoyment or suffering according to one's work in life. So how are you working in life? This question we were asking earlier, work in life. What is work? Life is work in progress. How are you working? Very deep, isn't it? This is Bhagavad Gita. How are you assessing the process of life? How are you working in life? There's it here. See here. Prabhupada is saying here, work in life. What is the work that you're doing? Are you addressing the process of life? Whew. Devotees, this is Bhagavad Gita. This is very deep. Let's see what Prabhupada says here towards the end. So Bhishma and Drona, being noble souls, were surely going to have spiritual bodies in their next life, or at least life in the heavenly bodies for superior enjoyment of material existence. So why is this so? Because as Kshatriyas, if they fight religious war, then they go to the heavenly planets. We heard that in first chapter. Krishna gave Arjuna that reasoning, that don't worry, if you lose here, you won't lose out. You'll still get a heavenly kingdom like that in the heavens. So there's no loss or diminution. So the same idea is here, that they are old now. Drona is old. Bhishma Dev was old, very old actually. He was almost 800 or 900 years old on the battlefield of Kurukshetra. So he was very old. So give him a new body, let him start life again. So in either case, there was no cause for lamentation. Any man who has perfect knowledge of the constitution of the individual soul, the super soul and nature, both material and spiritual, is called Dhira. Wow, look at the definition. This is a person who's Dhira. He has knowledge of the soul, the super soul, nature in matter and spiritual nature. This is Dhira. So you see this new wonderful definition of consciousness that Krishna is now expecting Arjuna to come up to. Dhiras tatra namuyate. Arjun, you have to come to this level. Dhira. This is very deep, isn't it? So remember this definition. Dhira means one who understands the soul, the super soul and nature, connected to matter and the spiritual nature. This person is Dhira. So Prabhupada goes on to say, such a man is never deluded by the change of the bodies. The Mayavadi theory of oneness of spirit soul cannot be entertained. See, Prabhupada calls this entertainment. You're just playing around by deluding people with this foolish consciousness. He's calling it entertainment. Huh? It's Prabhupada's sarcasm. You don't entertain this. Let's see why Prabhupada justifies this. On the grounds that the spirit soul cannot be cut into pieces as a fragmental portion. Such cutting into different individual souls would make the supreme cleavable or changeable against the principles of the supreme soul being unchangeable. So it's saying if we are God and we're coming down as souls here to have a human experience also, that means God has got cut up into small pieces. So if God got cut up, then we understand He's changeable. So if we are God and we're coming here into this material world as a small part of God, that means God is cleavable, is changeable. And if He's changeable, then that's a definition we gave to matter. Only matter changes. Spiritual nature never changes. So that means God then is material, which is, you see the logic? It doesn't make sense. So let's see what Prabhupada says here. As confirmed in the Gita, the fragmental portions of the Supreme exist eternally, sanatana, and are called kshara. That is, they have a tendency to fall down into material nature. So these two verses I quoted yesterday, the kshara, akshara, and the purushottam, that comes from Bhagavad Gita 15.16, and the sanatana comes from 15.7. These two verses I quoted yesterday. Prabhupada is quoting the same two verses here in this purport. Let's go on. These fragmental portions are eternally so, and even after liberation, the individual soul remains the same fragmental. But once liberated, he lives an eternal life in bliss and knowledge with the personality of Godhead. So you can see the experience there is bliss. The experience here, happiness. What the difference? Here in the material world, happiness is the highest thing we want. Peace is the highest thing we want. Yesterday, Prabhupada was saying about perfect peace and eternal peace. So that is what we conceive here. What is the spiritual world giving us? Bliss, ananda. What is the difference between sukh or happiness and ananda, bliss? Completely different states of experience. So Prabhupada ends with a very important point at the end here. He says, if Arjuna is on the same level with Krishna and Krishna is not superior to Arjuna, then their relationship of instructor and instructed becomes meaningless. How can, if they're both on the same level, then what does it mean that Krishna is instructing Arjuna? Would you take instructions from somebody who's the same? No, you respect the person because they have a superior level of knowledge. So how can they both be the same? You can't be instructed by somebody who's on the same level. How then does it justify that God is one? Because that means superior God is instructing inferior God. This is craziness. This is craziness. This doesn't make sense at all. Therefore, we are eternally part and parcel. It's eternal feature. Sanatana.